Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 55 of the Resilient Podcast. It is officially Mental Health Awareness Month, one of my favorite months throughout the year. Not only because it's the month where that I was born, but it's a month that's very dear and near to me, very special. Last month we celebrated 2 years of the Resilient Podcast. On episode 54 was the 2 year anniversary. Um, and I was so thankful for all the support that I've had in the last 2 years. The person that I have today on this show is someone who I recently, well, I wouldn't even say the word recently, but someone who came across, we crossed paths last year, someone who's been very supportive of the podcast, someone who actually connected with me because of one of the previous guests that I had on the podcast last year when I had Jose Cruz on the podcast from the World Needs Love tour. So this person is, without giving too much information, she is exactly from where I'm from, New York City, but I know she relocated a few years ago to a city and state that is very near and dear to my heart, and it's part of why the Resilient Podcast even started. So, like I said, this is someone who I've been wanting to interview for a long time because I love her story. We will hear more about her, of course, on this episode. But when I came across her social media, everything just was there. Like sometimes you look at someone's page and their story, everything is just right in your face. And this person, when I looked at her socials, everything was right there. Who she is, what she's about, why she does the things that she does. And she inspires me a lot, to be a better person. And I really, really love her story. And she shared her story with me briefly. I know she's going to share more of it today. So I'm so thankful for having her. And Nicole, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you
So
so much for having me.
you're welcome. So, to start things off, can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your journey?
Yes, so I'm Nicole. Most people know me by Coley on Instagram and all social media. I'm Coley Taught Me. I'm a mom of two. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm recently the founder of a nonprofit organization. I literally eat, sleep, breathe assistance, community, gratitude. It's just all around the accountability and the healing for me. It's become a lifestyle for me. And through that, I've learned to literally be a pillar for others who, even if they haven't experienced exactly my traumas, in that field of trauma, we're all healing from something, right? And I think that who I am, it really matters because of that, right? Like who I am today matters because of who I was yesterday and
Mhm.
what I overcame from yesterday. So when you ask, like who are you, or introduce yourself, there it's not just like, hey, I'm this 36-year-old female from Brooklyn who's now in Philly. And I know it's a little bit long-winded, but it really does speak to who I am, and I'm one grateful woman, just one grateful human being who is really, really grateful not only to be on this platform with you on your platform, but just grateful to have a voice to share my story.
I love that. And as for those of you that just heard, Nicole is from Brooklyn originally, where I'm
Yes.
from, but she lives in Philadelphia. And Nicole's very aware that my story about the podcast started because of Philadelphia, because of my ex girlfriend. That's where she lives. That's where she's from. And when she told me that she was from Philly, I said, "This is crazy. Like everything just happens. Like when something happens to you in life, the universe just connects you with everything that's relevant to it." So how would I know that because of following Jose Cruz and his journey, that someone was going to follow me from Philadelphia? And then I was going to share my story with her about everything. And she's going to be like, yeah, I live in the city of Philly. So, um, Nicole, you mentioned that you are a domestic abuse survivor. When you reflect on your story, what was the moment that changed everything for you?
My kids bearing witness. So there's a lot of intricate moments that I can think back, reflect on, and I kind of am like, wow, it was there I should have left. Man, if not there, definitely there. Okay, you went back, but then definitely that point right there. But my kids bearing witness was the point where it was like, ooh, this is too real. And now it doesn't stay within these four walls. There's two other humans that are absorbing this trauma. So for
Mm-hmm.
so long, as many people do know, and then many don't know, with domestic violence, it happens on the hush hush, quiet, secretive tip, and it's for a number of reasons. One, judgment, which is the more obvious reason, but
Yep.
two, fear, right? So you're scared and you're intimidated by your abuser, who is most likely telling you, if you speak this out loud, worse things can and will most likely happen to you.
Hmm.
So I think that it's just surviving domestic abuse. It's not, while it's not anything I've enjoyed and I'm proud of, it's definitely something that I needed in order to be who I am today, right? So I needed the trauma and the healing of the trauma and all the journey that comes with it.
Yeah, that's true. I've shared my story with people over the years, and on this podcast, when it comes mainly to that, to abuse, like domestic abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, just abuse, period. And, one of the reasons why, when it comes to women, and I've said this 1,000 times, and I probably shared this with you when we had personal conversations, that I'm very sensitive and very empathetic for women because I know that a lot of women go through abuse. And unfortunately, a lot of women are born, live their entire life, and die. And sometimes we never found out that they were abused.
Yep.
Sometimes we find out after they passed away. Like it'll be like a family gathering and there'll be a conversation and there's a trigger or something happens and there's a confession, right? Like that happens sometimes within families. Well,
Yeah.
they'll confess like, oh, by the way, your grandmother was abused by grandpa. That's why grandpa wasn't around, or that's why grandpa wasn't in the picture.
Or
And
even two
it's
family members in the distance conversing, discussing what they know to be true, but what everybody else kept secret, or what the two people involved were told, telling people to keep secret. And then it starts to spread, right? Like that's exactly how that conversation spreads.
exactly like I'm going to be 40 years old this month, and when I was a child, I remember what I saw. I remember what I witnessed, because my mom was unfortunately also a victim of domestic violence. And growing up, I would talk about what I knew, but it's so crazy how sometimes in between those narrations of what had happened, there was other perspectives thrown in there, and there was other stories and narratives thrown in there that I wasn't even aware of. And I said, wait a minute, I only knew about this, I didn't know about that. And it turned out for me to find out that my grandmother, who I speak all the time about, was also victim of domestic violence back home in the Dominican Republic. And it's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why my grandmother was so independent. Even though my grandmother had a boyfriend, like for the longest, she died with a boyfriend, which was the man that she met when she came to this country. She always had this sense of like just independency. Like she didn't depend on anyone, she never asked anyone for a favor. It was very rare, that if something fell on the floor, that my grandmother, even especially even at her age, she would ask somebody, can you please pick that up for me? She would
Right.
do it herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I can't talk for it, but I could only, this is just part of my uh feeling and opinion that maybe my grandmother was so groomed and structured to be so independent that she never had to ask a man for anything, that even as far as something that needed to be picked up, she would never ask anybody to do it because of her past, how she felt. So from my understanding, my grandmother had several kids. My grandfather, who was actually my mom's dad, apparently he had, abused her, and maybe men in between that she dated and whatnot or was with. And it got to the point where my grandmother was like, look, like enough is enough. I'm not going to be one of these females that, gets abused and just stays quiet. I heard in one of the stories that my grandmother actually one time, when she had gotten abused, actually like beat up her abuser right back,
I know that's right, Willa.
and,
I
and,
know
and,
that's right.
and said like, don't you ever put your hands on me again. And this is the last time you ever put your hands on me again.
Yeah.
I've heard stories in the past of women who have told me like, listen, I've attacked my abuser right back. I retaliated my abuser right back, and I gave him what he deserved. And even though I don't condone violence, when it comes to a situation like that, I'm like, look, you don't put your hands on a female. And if you put your hands on a female and she hits you back, I don't want to hear nobody complaining or no, I'm like, listen, it's actually justified. In my eyes, it's justified. You know, So that's why, like, um, with it being mental health awareness month, and we're going to talk about mental health awareness, but we're also going to talk about domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is very, very sensitive topic for me. It's not something that I talk about lightly. It's not something that I will allow someone, you know, how like sometimes we'll have a conversation,
Yeah.
open dialogue. I can have a lot of conversations that are open dialogue, but what I won't tolerate is a conversation where I am talking about domestic violence and someone's going to push their narrative as to justification as to why a female deserves to be abused or why anybody. I'm like, listen, domestic violence is domestic violence. Men get abused too. Sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes it's a woman abusing a man. We've heard stories about that as well too. Domestic violence should not be condoned, period. And domestic violence is not just something that happens with couples, but it also happens with children, you know, like child abuse and stuff like that. So that to me is a very sensitive topic. I've actually um, stepped away from people in the past who were like, "Oh wow, seriously, you're not going to talk to me anymore over this?" I'm like, "Yeah," because the thing is, you don't you know, you may have not gone through it, so that's why maybe are making the narratives that you're making, but don't ever speak for someone that went through abuse, especially domestic violence abuse. Don't ever criticize someone who went through that. Don't ever try to justify why they went through what they went through. Everyone has their own story. Everybody has their own trauma, and they are the ones that have to deal with it. They're the ones that have to live through it. So no one is anyone to judge them or try to dictate to them how they should feel.
Yeah.
And you know, Nicole, one of the things that I admire about you is that you being uh uh um unfortunately someone who's been abused, you're not going out there destroying the world. You're not going out there spreading hate. You're not going out there hurting people. You have two daughters, and you're not teaching your daughters to be bad people. You're actually teaching daughters like, look, this is what happened to me. I would never, and they witnessed it, like you mentioned, they were witnessing it. And I know that as a mother, what you're doing is you're teaching them how to defend themselves and also make sure that they never put themselves in a situation like that to begin with. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I remember when I came across your social media for the first time, I saw the word warrior everywhere. And this episode happens to be called Warrior. And you consider yourself a warrior, and I love that. And you know, it's funny to say this to you. When it comes to the word warrior, I've always seen mainly like males using it. I never really seen a female using it. So when I saw you using this word, not saying that I've never seen a female say it, but when I saw you using this word, it stood out. It stood out a little bit different from everybody else. So this episode is centered around the word warrior. So I wanted to ask you, what does it mean? Like, what does being a warrior mean to you in this chapter of your life?
So, as somebody who's experienced DV, I think warrior, well, I know for sure, warrior for me means thriving. So you go through these levels, right? And for myself, I never considered myself a victim. Maybe for about 5 minutes in the thick of it, I had that kind of woe is me, why is this happening? But the minute you realize it's happening and it's not ending, like you still may stay in the cycle, but you realize what's happening.
Mhm.
Um, I never had a victim mindset, but I was always on survival mode, right? I was always even in it. Every day that I went to sleep, when I went to sleep at night, it was like, whew, all right, we made it through another day. It wasn't catastrophic. It was we're decent. We're not yelling. We're not fighting. That's survival mode, right? You're just surviving one more, round of 24 hours, and then you do it again the next day, and you pray for the best. But then it became a point where he was out the house, the relationship was done. I was left with a 1 year old and a 3 year old,
Mhm.
and now I'm literally on survival mode. Now I
Mhm.
have to raise kids, survive, right? I have to keep the bills paid. And I said, I can't live like this forever. I can't. I
Mhm.
have to
Mhm.
turn this survival mode into something. And that's where actually the name of my organization is Survivor Warrior. And it's more so to educate people on that transitional phase from being in survival mode to then thriving as a warrior. And
Mhm.
it has everything to do with the healing phases, all the phases of healing and that journey. And to me, being a warrior is just thriving and no longer living in survival mode.
Mhm. You know, Nicole, I can't help but notice that you're wearing the color purple for the
Yes.
most part. And for those of you that are aware, and for those of you that are watching on YouTube, because I know that obviously there's people that just listen to this podcast on other platforms, they don't actually watch the episodes on YouTube. But for those that are watching on YouTube, it's visible that Nicole's wearing purple. For those of you that are not aware, in October, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I believe Nicole is wearing purple to signify that.
Yeah.
I know that you are on the podcast today, but I'm about to do something that I've never done before. I've never repeated a guest since I've had this podcast for 2 years. And I came up with an idea that I would like to invite you back on this podcast sometime in October so we can talk exactly about this. And the reason why, folks, that I'm saying this right now is because Nicole actually has an event coming up soon, and I would like for you to talk about that. And even though it's the month of May, this event is happening May 16th in the city of Philadelphia. And I would like Nicole to share briefly with everyone, for about a minute or so, what this event is about, what is it called, and what came about to make this event come to life.
Thank you so much. First of all, I definitely accept your invite. I cannot wait. I was actually pulling up my calendar as you were speaking just to see like, October is such a busy month for me because of DV Awareness Month.
Yes.
And before we get into May's month, I just want to also say, I don't know if you know this, but in October, I do a DV walk in New York City also. So
beautiful.
And that big shout out to Jose Cruz. I know you mentioned him earlier in the podcast. That is our link of connectivity, right? And
yes,
I do an annual walk, and I'm going to get back to May's walk, I promise. I just wanted to mention this because of Jose. He was in 2024, I started the annual walk for DV awareness in Philly and in New York City, and he partnered with me for my first one. And if you know Jose, you know he loves that Brooklyn Bridge, right? Like that's his place.
Yeah.
That's where he goes. And he stood there with me, and we held our DV and our mental health awareness signs. And I was so shocked at just the difference in how they received me, right? So we know Brooklyn, New York is like raw dog, right? And that's where people are like, get out the way, you're in my way, move. Like I'm trying to walk the bridge. And in Philly, when we did our walk, we were on a megaphone, we were speaking, we were engaging with other people, even strangers. But here, Jose was like, let's do this like the way I do it so you can see a different outcome. And we just stood there silently holding signs. And the amount of people who came up to me to express how they experienced DV or were of support to somebody who has experienced DV was astonishing to me. Because here I am trying to use my voice so loudly to reach other people, not realizing, wow, one sign, and they're all flocking to me to share their story and also their experience around that world. But that's neither here nor there. I will definitely be back in October, and we'll speak more about the walk on then also. May 16th, I'm partnering with Coach Williams. She is probably one of the most heaven-sent patient people I've met in a very long time. But she reached out to me and she kind of was like, listen, what you do, what I do, it's in alignment. Like you had mentioned earlier, we're all in alignment these days, right? When we start moving with purpose. And May 16th, we're putting together our mental health awareness walk. That's an annual thing that she does. She has now asked me to partner with her, and I am looking forward to doing this moving forward annually. We're going to be at the MLK Drive, Martin Luther King Drive. If you're in Philly, you know where that's at. It's a known kind of walkway for Philadelphians. We'll be out there at 8 a.m. and we're basically going city to city. Now, this is the cool part about this, right? And I had to tell her, like, I want to piggyback off this idea for October. I'm kind of going to take her idea, I think, a little bit. But she is doing this in every city at the same time in major cities. So we have basically the entire East Coast cut off, right? We have people here, we have Jersey, we have Delaware, we have North Carolina. So at 8 a.m. on May 16th, we're all walking, we're all wearing the same shirt, we're all, tagging the same things. And it's to create impact nationwide for mental health awareness. And I thought that was so special, like really special, because it's one thing when you and I have this conversation, and yeah, it will reach the masses through way of internet and media, right? Social media. But it's another thing to have that human to human kind of like personal touch, right? And now what I'm doing, somebody down in Virginia is affected positively by what I'm doing because somebody there is doing exactly what I'm doing at the exact same time. So it's just so cool to me. And I think that if you go on my page, I know my hashtag, my handle's here. If you go on my page, it's pinned. You can see all the cities. I have all the cities posted. And if you're in any of those cities, man, come out, walk. Even if you're not in one of those cities and you're in your own city, catch the date, catch the time, come out, walk, tag us in it, and you'll definitely be posted. And we'll just, the whole point is to trend, right? We want to make mental health awareness a trending topic
Mm-hmm.
because so often we see the crash outs trending, right? We see
Mm-hmm.
all the drama trending, the trauma trends, but we
Mm-hmm.
never see the positivity really like trending and going viral for where it needs to be, right? And
Right.
that's really what we're looking to do, like change the trajectory of the social media thing, this whole trending, this whole like, imagine you go online on May 16th and your whole For You page is mental health awareness. Like
I
you
know,
have
right?
no space but for the algorithm to start algorithming in a positive way, right? And that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
This is how we take old school ways of like walks, right? That's the best way to spread awareness, and we apply them to new school ways of social media, and we're trying to make that link and also create mass impact.
I love that. I really do. Speaking about the walk, like, um, I've never seen a mental health awareness walk. I know that in the month of May, there's also the AIDS walk, which you're probably
Yes.
familiar with. And it's funny because the one time that I was invited to do the annual AIDS walk, it usually sometimes hits around my birthday. My birthday's May 19th.
I
So
May
for
10th.
the there you go, another Taurus in the
That's
house.
it.
So yeah, your birthday's coming up soon.
Yep.
Actually, before the walk. But the only time that I was invited to this popular AIDS walk was on my birthday, and I remember that day I was getting ready for it. I was told that what's this gentleman's name? Kevin Hart was supposed to be at the walk, and they were doing it over here in Brooklyn, right by my house in Prospect Park. You're probably very familiar
Yes.
with Prospect Park. And I remember I wasn't able to make it because, unfortunately, I think because I was partying too much or whatever the night before, I just didn't have the energy. And I felt terrible because I literally had to reach out to them and be like, hey, listen, I'm not going to be able to do the walk today. And I just never did it ever again. But every year, I always see, pictures and media about the AIDS walk. Now, the mental health awareness walk, never seen that. I'm very big on mental health awareness. I talk about mental health awareness a lot. This is one of the reasons why I created this podcast on this platform. Um, so I would definitely in the near future want to be part of a mental health awareness walk. And I thank you, Nicole, for doing that. I thank you for spreading that type of awareness. I got the chills and a little bit of goosebumps when you mentioned that different cities are going to be doing this same exact walk. So Nicole, does anyone have to register to a certain link to be part of this? Because I know you invited people cordially to this, but is there a link
Yeah.
that they have to? Okay, so the link will be right here on the screen in front of us. You guys click on this link. You only have a few days left, like less than a week, less than 2 weeks to sign up. Sign up and go out there and walk with Nicole.
And
And
we
when
do
you're
encourage everybody to sign up. One, you, as you know, Rob, signing up, it just lets us keep better track of who's with us. It allows us to invite you to further events, future events, things like that. Keep
yes,
you guys in the loop with what we have going on.
mm-hmm.
But listen, if you wake up that morning and for the past 2 months you had something planned that day and you didn't sign up, and then that morning plans cancel and you want to come out. If you
Yeah,
wake up that morning and you're just in the mood to take a walk and you have your kids, come out. You know what I
yeah,
mean? You don't have to, and we do encourage the signing up because we do need that.
mm-hmm.
However, I don't want to discourage anybody from, because as you know, with mental health awareness, listen, some days you don't realize you need the help more than others, you know? Some days you
Mm-hmm.
wake up, you're fine. Other days you're
Mm-hmm.
like, damn, I need a community right now. I need a hand. And if that May 16th is one of those mornings for anybody out there and they wake up and they're looking for community, they're looking for support, they're just looking for somebody else's story so they can deflect from their own for just 5 minutes, come out. Come out, come walk with us. Even if you're in a city that you don't see posted as already, being represented for the walk, walk in your city, walk in your
Mm-hmm.
town, walk on your block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And folks, for that event, the information will be right here for those that are watching on YouTube, for those that listen on Spotify and all the other platforms. In the description of this podcast, you will find the link. Please register as soon as possible. And I look forward to, because I know Nicole's going to be doing a lot of media for this. I know Nicole's been
Yes.
talking about this walk already for a while. This is why I wanted to have Nicole on the show as soon as possible so that we can talk about it in the actual month where it's taking place. So Nicole, I wanted to ask you a question that I know sometimes it can be difficult for people to answer, but during some of your most difficult moments, what helped you find the strength to keep going?
God. So no matter what, I always knew to lean on him, right? I think for me that the part where it gets difficult or got difficult was where I wasn't listening to him. But I
Hmm.
always knew where to go. I
Hmm.
always knew when I was, stuck, when I was confused, when I was hurt, when I was sad, when I was angry, go there. And that was like my go-to. But right after that, it would be the gym.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
I needed the gym to get out of what I was going through mentally,
Yeah.
physically. And if anybody out there is familiar with the gym life, you go there to change your physical and you end up with a mental change, right? Like you end up on this whole nother level of like mindset, and it's not done always intentionally. It happens on its own, and the mindset shifts on its own when you start being a disciplined person, when you start being dedicated to your routine, when you start being accountable to your changes, right? And it's like, oh, I only meant that to happen when I go to the gym for 45 minutes. That's where I thought discipline, you don't realize it translates into the other 23
Hmm.
hours and 15 minutes of your day. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Because you're practicing, that's a habit you're now practicing on a daily basis. And the gym, it really saved me. Like it really saved me.
I love that, and I'm sure Nicole would agree with me on this, but folks, like, going to the gym, it definitely helps you get your endorphins up. It definitely helps clear your mind. It is one of the most natural forms of, just making peace with everything, like, being resilient, going to the gym, whether it's walking on the treadmill, running on the treadmill, whether it's lifting weights or whatever the case may be, it definitely helps your mental. And one thing I can tell you for sure is, for those that follow Nicole on social media, she's always working out. She's always showing either a selfie or a video of that time that she dedicated at the gym for the day. And it's a coping mechanism. It's a positive coping mechanism, because of course, for some people that may have gone through what Nicole has gone through in life, some people were a result of drugs, some people were a result of alcohol, some people were a result of unhealthy habits. But someone like Nicole made the gym a healthy coping mechanism and a healthy habit, which
So let me
I
just be
wish more people could
transparent.
do.
I want to be I didn't want to cut you off. I'm sorry, but I want to be
No problem.
transparent because I think
No
a
problem.
lot of people out there, and I've been told this, like, I want to be just like you. How do I get there? And it's like, this is 6 years later. Like, let's not forget the whole middle ground of those 6 years, right?
Yeah.
It started with a lot of marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So he was arrested. The girls were 1 and 3 years old. It was December. It was New Year's Eve, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
3 months later, we were in shutdown of COVID.
Yeah.
So I'm raising two babies. I'm healing post 8 years, 8.5 years of DV. Only 90 days later, right? Now we're
Mm-hmm.
on shutdown mode. Now I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember once the daycares, because the daycares opened up back up first. They
Yeah.
sent the babies back, they try to make everything safe. Once they opened back up, I can remember smoking and literally sitting in my room for days on end. And I was on autopilot of getting up just to drop the girls off.
Mm-hmm.
And then 9 hours later, getting up just to pick them up,
Mm-hmm.
going in the kitchen to make them something to eat, coming back and doing the same thing. And it was probably about 7 months when I stood there and I looked up and I was like, and then I was receiving unemployment. I was receiving benefits because at that time they were just caking everything up, right? And I was just in this space, and I guess when it first started, I was like, oh, this is the silver lining of all the abuse I went through. I get to sit at home and do nothing until you realize all you're doing is rotting in
Mm-hmm.
trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, this can't work. This isn't going to work. Yes, I was still praying every day because, again, I never lost sight of where I need to lean on or who I
Mm-hmm.
need to lean on as far as God is concerned and my spirituality and faith. But I was still, the difficulty again is me not listening. So
Mm-hmm.
he's giving me more opportunity, more opportunity, more opportunity. And I'm sitting there sulking in my woe is me kind of mindset. And I'm literally smoking myself day in and day out. And then it was the gym, right? So then it was like, oh, okay, this is different. A positive coping mechanism. Like you said, when you just said that, that's what triggered my memory into that. Like, I want to be real because I think a lot of viewers who tune into this episode specifically for the mention of domestic violence and the healing from it, I don't want anybody to be discouraged because here's Coley, who first attempt, she gets the gym, she fixes her body, her mind is better, she's entrepreneur. Guys, it didn't work like that. It's not this super pretty pathway. It took a lot.
Yeah,
It
you had to
took a
go.
lot of me
You had to
sitting.
go through something to get where you're at now.
Yeah, like I had to sit in that mindset that really it was so and I don't use the word depression because I don't want to play on that and then be like, well, you see, I got out of it, because I know people truly struggle and can't get there that quickly or that,
Mm-hmm.
effectively, that in that
Mm-hmm.
way. So I don't want to say I was in a depression, but I was in a self-sabotage. That's what I'll
Mm-hmm.
call it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
even
remember
though I
us
was
talking about that.
functioning, I was just self-sabotaging every day. And then I was
Yeah.
putting a smile on my face and justifying why I was doing it, because I could.
Mm-hmm.
And as
Mm-hmm.
humans, I think we naturally do what we could get away with until it just hurts us or we can't get away with it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to know you're going to go through the ups and downs. We know healing isn't linear, right? I feel amazing. My past, I didn't even think about that. I'm talking about it, and obviously I can reflect and discuss in a way that doesn't emotionally affect me. But tomorrow may not be that. Tomorrow I
Mm-hmm.
may wake up and my daughter may say something or ask me something about daddy, and now I'm super like kind of like shit that I wasn't. Well, am I allowed to curse? I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Like
It's okay.
like I wasn't expecting it, and you're only as healed as your next trigger, right? We all know that when we're in that healing journey together, you know that the triggers come when you're not expecting them.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you think you've overcome so much, you're gonna be kind of hit with that last trigger to see like how far have you really come.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that like give myself grace. So anybody out there, I say that to say that. I said that to say this. Give
Grace is
yourself
very
grace.
important.
Yeah, and give it to yourself, because I think so often we give others the benefit of the doubt. We give
Mm-hmm.
others grace. We give others mercy. We give others forgiveness. But who's like we have to give it to ourselves first so we can pour from that cup.
Oh yeah.
And that's a really really tough thing when you're in that healing journey. It's daunting, man. You feel like it's just everything is against you. And so anyway, I said all that to say yes, the gym is a very positive coping mechanism. I'm so grateful for it, and I'm grateful that I'm here now. But anybody who isn't quite there, just know that that's another and a very positive option for you. And if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't explored it yet, definitely explore it. The heaviest weight in the gym is the doorknob. Once you get in it,
Mm-hmm.
you're more than likely going to sit in there. Whether you do everything correctly or not, your form is good, whether you love it, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to do something because you're in there. So just open that door, get in there, and if nothing else, do it just so you have 45 minutes of nothing else that's been distracting you all day.
I love that. I love how you said that, about the doorknob at the gym.
Yeah.
But so far it's been a great conversation with Nicole. I like everything that you have shared so far. This conversation to me, I'm learning. I'm learning. I'm learning from what I already know, and it's always good to apply other perspectives into your healing journey. You mentioned it. I say this all the time. Healing is not linear. But we mentioned, I mentioned this word a lot in my vocabulary. I've heard you say it on this episode so far. The word accountability. Accountability is very important. And I like how you said you don't want to consider yourself a victim. You call yourself, you actually consider yourself a survivor. And there's a difference between both of those things. There's a difference between being a victim and a survivor. Yes, you automatically by default will be labeled as a victim because it happened to you. But how you deal with it is the survival part of it. You know what I'm saying? Whether you survived in a positive way, whether you survived in a negative way. And some people, they want to stay with that victim mindset. They acknowledge that something happened to them, but they want to live in victim mode for the rest of their lives. And we know people that are like that. And then we know people that survived and tried to, make the better out of it, make the best out of it. Somebody like me, for example, I was abused as a child. I was not just abused by my family, but I was abused by other people, physically, emotionally, mentally. And again, I could have been out there as a man because this is what happens to a lot of men. Like for example, the story of Mike Tyson. He was abused, became a boxer, but he became very violent. He was hurting people, hurting women, bit somebody's ear off in the middle of a match one day. And all of this came from all that anger and all that stuff. And, this is a person that didn't know really how to channel all of that, and unfortunately got themselves in trouble. He went to jail a few times, and now the person that we see now, because Mike Tyson is like almost like 60 something now, right? I mean, he's still out there being a little hothead, but he has spent so much time talking on podcasts, reflecting on, listen, like I felt like a victim. I always wanted to be in that victim mindset, but then I realized I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor. And that's the same thing with me, with my situation, with my breakup. my ex-girlfriend hurt me a lot, emotionally. She may not be fully aware of it. She may not, care, or may not even, it may have not struck any something to her in her head, like, oh wow, I really hurt this guy. But this was a form of abuse, like how she treated me, how she spoke to me, how she handled our relationship. And a lot of people will look at it and be like, well, wait a minute, this man sounds so hurt from that. I'm like, yeah, because I'm a human and I have emotions. And I was in a relationship with someone who turned out to be emotionally unavailable because they were dealing with their traumas as well too. They didn't know how to exercise them. They didn't really know that they're constantly just projecting. And because she projected so much, a lot of that projection from what happened with her and her dad, how her dad treated her ex-boyfriends that came before me treated her, I had to pay for that. And I was reliving what happened to my mother, who was also someone who went through abuse. My mom treated me a certain way when I was a child because she was projecting on me what she went through. And then as a grown man, I relived that again in a personal relationship that I had with someone who, one, I wanted to marry, two, I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, until eventually I realized, damn, I left. Sometimes they say you leave people better than you found them. In this situation, when she left me a mess. She left me in a pile of dust and collateral damage. And I had to pick myself up. I had to do what I needed to do to make myself feel better. I had to do I had to do everything possible to make sure that I dust myself off. And I had the option of going out there and being a chaotic person and hurting women and saying, well, F the world. But that wasn't me. That wasn't me. Thank God for therapy. Nicole, we've talking about therapy before as well too. Thank God for therapy. My therapist has been with me throughout the entire journey. My therapist was already in my life before I met my ex-girlfriend. So my therapist remembers when we started dating, how all of that went. Then as things started getting a little different, and she was like, well, do you want to be in this relationship? Because I don't know, it doesn't sound like this is somebody who appreciates you, Rob. It doesn't sound like this is somebody who cares about you, Rob. Until the very end, until we broke up. And my therapist, one of the first things she said to me was like, look, I don't want to tell you I told you so, but I knew this was going to happen. I didn't see things getting better. Every time we spoke, things usually were getting worse and worse and worse. And I was just waiting to see if he was going to be smart enough to figure it out.
Right.
But you were so caught up, you were so in love that you allowed this to happen. And this is what happens sometimes in domestic violence relationships, that sometimes a woman will be with a man who's abusing her because she's scared to leave. She still loves him. Sometimes we love our abusers. Sometimes we have something for our abusers, which is sad, right? And then after the fact is where we realize, like, damn, I dodged a bullet. But the pain is already there. The trauma is already there. The wounds and the scars are already there. So it takes a lot for us as the survivors to get where we need to be, where we're no longer in survival mode, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So like I said, like, that reason why I created this platform is for us to heal and for us to discuss these things and talk about being resilient. And we're going to talk about being resilient in a bit. But before we take a quick break, I wanted to take a moment to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Victor's, holistic medicine brand, Nala Health. For those of you that watch and listen to the episode, you already know that whenever you visit the website, which is right here on the screen, nalahealth.com, there's a lot of medicine on there. There's a lot of stuff for addiction, stuff for insomnia, people that are dealing with, for example, like caffeine overload, take a few drops in your coffee before you have for those that drink coffee. And not just and not just that, but one of my favorite, I mean, most of the products, I got to be honest, literally every product on Nala's website is great for me. But one of my favorite ones is insomnia, the insomnia formula, because someone like me, who's also an entrepreneur, just like Nicole, sometimes we have restless nights. Sometimes we wake up super early and we go to bed very late. And, if I know that I have something special to do, like, for example, like this podcast, we're shooting it so early today. I knew that I had to be early today, so I took some of those insomnia drops yesterday to make sure that I had a good night's rest, so that when I woke up today, I didn't feel groggy. So, folks, visit nalahealth.com, and every time that you use this code right on screen, TRP10, 10% off of your order. And this is a recurring thing. This is not just a one-time use. Every single time you use the code TRP10 on the Nala Health website, 10% off just for listening to the Resilient Podcast. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back and we'll ask Nicole some more questions. So I will see you all in a bit. All right, folks, welcome back to episode 55 of the Resilient Podcast. Today in studio, we have Nicole Figueroa. We've been talking about being a warrior. We've been talking about, surviving traumas. And, it is the Resilient Podcast. Before we continue with this episode, I just wanted to briefly put out there, unfortunately, earlier this week, I received the news that one of my uncles had passed away. His name was Arsenio. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because everybody knows I usually talk a lot about my grandmother. I always talk about how my grandmother is my champion. My grandmother is my rock. My grandmother is the reason why I am here today. But I never really talk about, like the steps that it took for my grandmother to get here to this country. So I just mentioned that my grandmother is the reason why I'm here today. But my uncle who passed away recently, he is the reason why my grandmother came to the United States. So many, many years ago in the 1960s, my uncle Arsenio, who's actually my father's eldest brother, was one of the first people to come from the motherland, Dominican Republic, to the United States. And my uncle spent some time here and became a citizen. And then eventually he helped my grandmother actually come to this country when my grandmother was trying to escape the regime of Trujillo and whatnot. So if it wasn't for my uncle, my grandmother would have never had the resources to come to this country and do everything that she did. So, I want to take this moment, to pretty much acknowledge, my uncle's passing and, to my family members on my father's side. My father recently just turned, as a matter of fact, yesterday, my father turned 75 years old on April 30th. God bless my dad. But, it's unfortunate that, he spent his 75th birthday with a loss. But life is short and it's beautiful. And my uncle, even though we weren't that close when I was a child, I was around him a lot, and I remember him. He was always smiling, always a positive person. He was recently ill. I remember when my mom first brought it up to my attention, she was saying he had became ill. And he was older too. He was like in his 80s, so it wasn't like he was like super young. But he recently got ill, and unfortunately, he passed from the illness. But I remember him. My memories of him is, he always had a smile on his face. Was a very big guy, very big guy. He was like over 6 feet for sure, and always had a big belly. Because he loved eating food and he loved drinking beer. But he was such a peaceful man. That never heard of anything crazy about him. Never saw him to be part of any type of issues or scandals or any type of violence with anybody. He was just a very peaceful, mediating type of person, someone who kind of kept the family together. So that's one of the memories I have of him. And, it's very unfortunate that he's passed, but, this is life. And I've always tell people that life is one. Passion is life. Without much passion, there isn't much life. It's a quote that I use a lot. And yeah, so, rest in peace to my uncle, Arsenio Rodriguez. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and talk about that. And Nicole, I wanted to talk to you about resilience because we are literally on the Resilient Podcast. So my next question to you is, we've talked about survival, we've talked about all these things, but this is a question that I always like to ask people because I always want to know, where they're at, when it comes to this question. So my next question to you is, what was the most resilient moment in your life?
The most resilient moment in my life. So it's a layered question, right? So I'm trying to give you like the Cliff Notes version. I think the most resilient moment in my life, and this may sound odd because yes, I've had kids. Yes, I've overcome what I've overcome. But for me personally, my most resilient moment would have to be the day that I woke up and realized, mm-mm. And I say that day because for so long, like, yes, I had kids and I was resilient and it was hard and I overcame it and I raised them as infants alone. And that's resilience, right? Like, you have to be resilient to be able to do that, all of that. But to come back mentally and emotionally from something that flipped you upside down, to do it on your own, and then that epiphany of a moment where you're like, oh, I've never felt so resilient. I've never felt like, oh my goodness, my armor, it was dented, it wasn't broken. It
Hmm.
was, it was a little tarnished, but I could
Hmm.
shine it back up.
Hmm.
And I didn't feel that until that day that I woke up. And I'll never forget, again, for any survivors out there, a transparency moment, that aha moment, waking up and being resilient and feeling like my armor, that didn't happen very early on. There
Hmm.
were many mornings where I woke up and I felt defeated,
Hmm.
completely defeated. Yes, he was already out the house. No, he wasn't coming back. But
Hmm.
it's a mental thing, right? And
Yes.
you can tell yourself all these things. People can tell you, you can read it, you can watch it, you can say you're going to do it, but if you don't feel it and if it's not really within, all that is lip service, right? So when I really woke up and I felt it, and honestly, I'd probably say the day too, because then it was like, I don't feel, I didn't go back. Like, I'm good. 2 days in a row, I feel good. And not, again, not perfect because the feeling isn't linear. You're not going
Hmm.
to feel amazing every day. But my
Hmm.
mindset shifted and it was like, okay, I can now do this and I will do this. And I think it was that moment where I was, and I don't know if that's like the perfect answer, but that's like a true answer for me. My resilience was in my never looking back moment.
Oh. So, it's fair to ask you, what does resilience mean to you personally?
Resilience to me is the bounce back, right? Like the dusting yourself off, like you mentioned, right? Like if
Hmm.
somebody leaves you in a pile of dust, you're gonna sit there and let it suffocate you, or you're gonna slowly but surely start like, okay, there's some here, and eventually you get rid of all of it, and then you're like, oh, okay, and then you stand up and you're like, oh, I can stand. I'm not buried in soot, in dust.
Hmm.
So I think that's really what resilience is to me.
Okay. I like that. Nicole, I like to sometimes get deep into like where people are at the moment and see how, where they are at the moment, how they feel that they can branch out, that they can, you know, give advice to someone that may be going through the same situation. So for those who may be going through a similar situation like yours, what advice would you give them?
Speak to somebody. It doesn't have to be everybody. It doesn't have to be somebody you thought it would be. You know what I mean? A lot of people are like, oh, my best friend. I need my best friend, or I need that cousin that I've known my whole life. Sometimes, no, you don't need that person. You need somebody who doesn't know you or somebody who isn't biased, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you do need that person. But the point is, don't keep it in because more than likely, either one of a number of things will happen. They've also experienced it because, like I said, it's so much more common than we even know or discuss out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And or if there's somebody that can help you, they will help you because you're looking for it, you're seeking, seeking out,
Mm-hmm.
or they will point you in a direction of help. And I say that because I remember early in my healing journey, people were like, go to this person, they have housing resources, right? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no, but I have an apartment. He left. I don't need that person. But it was that housing resource that got me my therapy resource, who got me then my life coach resource. So it's like, don't not just speak to somebody. Speak. You never know what branch of assistance, of support, of help, what comes of just speaking out loud. And don't carry shame. You could only speak once that shame is rid of you're rid of that shame, because that shame will keep you silent for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nothing to be ashamed of. A lot of my survivors, and I call them my survivors because They are, when they're in that victim mindset, they are of the abuser, right? They have an abuser to attach themselves to. And I always
Mm-hmm.
tell them, like, if you need to attach yourself mentally to something, attach yourself to like survival. So I say my survivors. It's not a controlling thing. I don't want people to misunderstand that. But
Mm-hmm.
my survivors, I tell them all the time, like, you don't realize how familiar people are with your story and they don't even know you. And I think that if we understood that and we really, really took from what, there's no shame that's too, I don't know how to put this in words. There is no experience that's too shameful to share with somebody, because guess what? For every experience you've had, somebody out there has had it worse, has
Mm-hmm.
overcome something bigger, has
Yep.
heard something similar. And until we speak about it, guess what? We'll never know. So my advice for anybody dealing with domestic violence: one, pray. Always pray. You may not, your prayers are being answered even if you don't see it. But two, rid yourself of any shame you've attached yourself to.
Mm-hmm.
Rid yourself of any judgment that you falsely connected yourself with based off
Mm-hmm.
of your experiences, and
Mm-hmm.
just speak to somebody. Speak to somebody, even if you don't listen to the advice, right? Because a little statistical point of view, it takes a survivor 7 times before they actually leave.
Mm-hmm.
And leaving is the most dangerous time, because if anybody knows out there, you leave, you're either going to be threatened, followed, stalked, harassed, murdered. It gets that deep when people leave, because it's a control thing with a narcissist or an
Yeah.
abuser. And that's why people are always like, why don't you just tell them to leave? And it's like, well, it's not that cut and dry. And my advice isn't just leave, because before you leave, you have to know, are you ready to leave? Because if you're not ready to leave and you leave, you can be putting yourself in harm's way. You can be
Mm-hmm.
putting yourself in the front of danger when you don't have to. So there's other things that you have to do before leaving to mentally prepare you and give you the mindset of, I don't need to be here and I won't be here any longer. And that's, rid yourself of the shame and speak to somebody.
I love that. So Nicole, as we mentioned before, it's Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes.
Um, I'm sure mental health is a cause also, and mental health awareness is also a cause near and dear to you. What does mental health awareness mean to you?
So, mental health awareness is literally what it says, being aware of your mental health. I think a lot of people put that stigma of mental health awareness is positivity all the time. And no, it's really not, right? Like, it's really, really not. Because if you do your, as I'm sure you have in your journey and in your experiences of professionalism, you do your research. As humans, we majority of the time think negatively, right? Like, that's just
Mhm.
how we're wired. That's our
Yeah.
nature here around us. That's where we grow up in environments, especially where we come from.
Mm-hmm.
We just wired that way. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not so much to say, oh, well, mental health awareness, we didn't hear about that when we were growing up. Now we hear about it everywhere. It means positive mindset or thinking good things only, and it doesn't. It means being aware of your mind, being
Mm-hmm.
aware that there are bad days and that's okay. Being
Mm-hmm.
aware of how to manage those bad days, not just cope. Because, yeah, there are coping mechanisms, but even in the gym, right? Like, an extremist is going to be an extremist no matter how positive of something you put in front of them. You give an extremist the gym, they'll wind up, one of those people that are on steroids and they're, abusing that. And you want to be in tune with yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
so difficult to get out of tune with yourself, I think. Be in tune with yourself and understand that you're not going to always know what's happening. I've conversed with you about this in our personal conversations. It's not until recent, and I'm 6 years out of that experience and that relationship and that abuse. But it's not until recent that I really find myself, like, mental health wise, like, ooh, I'm being challenged.
Mm-hmm.
God, I see you. You answered all my prayers thus far, but now I see you ready to elevate me to some higher level, because they don't tell you about all the relationships. And these aren't just romantic relationships, these are
Mm-hmm.
platonic relationships, these are
Yes.
workships, right? They don't tell you about all those triggers that come after that healing process starts. And there are plenty of people that I've interacted with where I'm like, ooh, you're challenging my mental health right now. You're triggering a trauma from the past, where I know, I'm aware enough where I know that you're not doing it on purpose to do that, but I'm also aware and intentional enough to know it's doing it, right? Like, my mental health is being affected by this. And I told you previously in a conversation, like, am I doing this right? It almost makes you feel like you're doing the healing wrong, because you like, wait a minute, I spazzed out. I haven't spazzed out in 6 years. Like, I haven't cursed somebody out in 6 years. And it felt good. Wait, that must mean I'm doing the healing wrong, right? Because why does it feel that good? But that's reality, and healing isn't linear, and you're not going to do it perfectly. So you spaz out and you maybe did something you know you shouldn't have done, whether or not you're justified, whether or not the reasoning is there. And I think a lot with mental health, it's being aware and intentional, regardless of whether you're right in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so easy to crash out because you're right, but still you're negatively affecting your mental health
Mm-hmm.
because you're justified. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, and especially in our cultures and communities where we come from, that street code, that block code, that just our code in our communities is you're right. You know, like I'm right, you're wrong. I'm going to prove to you that I'm right. I'm going to show you that. And it's like, you don't realize how trying to prove you're right, you being right can really affect you, especially if you're
Mm-hmm.
proving it to people that aren't worthy of your, you know, your validity of in it. So there's a few things that come with mental health, but to me, mental health is just the awareness of your mind and just being okay with what's happening and navigating it in a healthy way.
Yeah. Today is the first day of May. It's literally the first day of Mental Health Awareness Month. And, in regards to mental health, like I've learned, especially, I think it has a lot to do with one, the therapy, because the
Yes.
therapy definitely helps make you more aware. Like you just mentioned, it's about being aware of your mental health. But before even the therapy, the fact that when I went to college, I went to school for psychology. And I was so, with the fact that my family has had a history of mental health issues, on my mother's side mainly. Um, I have an uncle who is schizophrenic. And this is my late aunt's husband. Of course, they didn't know anything about it because, my family, unfortunately, being from, overseas, and how they may not handle things within the culture a certain way, the way we do here in America. You see, here in America, we have awareness of everything, right? Like, there's no awareness months in other countries. At least,
Right.
at least they don't promote it as much as we do here in America. Like America, we literally like
There's a
boom, like
month, a
it's
color, a symbol, a ribbon
yeah,
color. We have it for
exactly.
everything. Yeah, you're right.
And that's one of the beauties of this country is that some people that are from other places thrive off of that and say, listen, back home, like for example, like we've heard the stories of how like in Russia, a lot of just Europe in general, a lot of people in Europe commit suicide because it's very damp, it's very dark, it's always raining, it's always this, it's always that. Germany, it rains a lot.
Yep.
And when it comes to mental health awareness, a lot of people from overseas that I have connected with through networking, they have said to me, I'm so thankful that we have a mental health awareness month here in America because we can talk about it and know, and people who are actually synced into it will talk about it. Those that are not aware will probably criticize it at first and be like, why do we have to talk about mental health? Because a lot of people confuse mental health. A lot of people automatically hear the word mental health, they think someone's crazy.
Yeah.
And
That too. Yeah,
that
you're right.
that could be a part of mental health issues, but it's not the whole entire thing.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? There's more to it. So I think that because we have these causes like Mental Health Awareness Month, and people educate themselves on mental health, like I did when I went to school for psychology. I was able to have a bit of more of understanding. I was able to understand, okay, now I know what schizophrenia is and why my uncle acts the way he does. He's not always going to be there. He's not always going to be socially aware of everything that's happening because unfortunately he's dealing with a mental health disease, a mental disease. So, for example, this morning, I went to go get some breakfast and coffee, and I went to the Dunkin' Donuts down the block from my house. And as I was finishing eating, a gentleman who I normally see when I go to that Dunkin' Donuts location is always outside, waiting for somebody to either give him money or give him food. I'm not a fan of giving people money because sometimes I mean, it depends. I don't really know what they're going to do with it. So actually prefer to give them food because I know food is way more important, for somebody to make sure that they had a meal. So this gentleman, never seen any issues with him aside from the fact that he's always outside, trying to get somebody to give him a meal or something. And today, as I was getting ready to leave, he walks in and he had like what I believe was an episode. he started, he barged in, he started screaming and yelling, literally took out like a gavel of some sort. And I'm like, where did he get this from? You know? And it's like the ones that we've always seen, like in cartoons, like with Bugs Bunny, where it's like a giant gavel, like that sometimes clowns have it,
Yeah.
and they smash it and hit somebody with it. More like they call, I think they call it sometimes like a pallet or something like that. And I'm like, what is going on here? And he literally was like just screaming at the employees at Dunkin' Donuts. And I noticed mainly a lot of them were women, and there was probably one guy, and he's screaming and yelling and cursing, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm ready today. If somebody wants to try me, I'm ready today. And if they want to come hurt me, I'm ready." And I remember him literally saying to these folks, you know, uh, I just came out of jail, so I don't care going back. And I'm looking at him, and there was like a lady who was there, and I noticed she ran out. I literally stayed there because I said, look, I'm not here trying to play therapist or anything, but clearly this man is having an episode, and I just want to make sure everybody's safe. So I didn't want to leave until I can see what was going to happen next. So I noticed how calm they were with him. And that's the first, and again, that's being mentally aware. I noticed how they weren't reacting. They weren't like running to the back. They didn't. He even said, if you want to call the police, call the police. And I actually heard, I believe the manager, she was saying, I'm not going to call the police. And I noticed that they're very calm with him. And I was like, you know what? He's done this before. It's not the first time, and they're used to it. And for the most part, most likely, he's never really done anything. And they know that he's harmless, regardless of all this stuff that he's doing, like all this antics and all this stuff. But I noticed that they kind of diffused it, and they told him, listen, no one's gonna bother you today. It's okay. And he's like coming out like with this weapon in his hand. And now another man comes in, and he's just looking at me, and we're like looking at each other, talking to each other to the eyes, like we're, if he does something, we're gonna have to try to subdue him before the cops get here. Thankfully, it wasn't one of those situations. He, after his screaming and yelling, the funniest thing happened. He asked for a coffee, and he actually paid for it. So I was like, man, you
All of
could have
that for that,
ordered
right?
yeah, you could have ordered the coffee first and give us the scene later. But he calmed down, grabbed his coffee, and he just became a different person.
Wow.
That's the mental health. Like this man clearly has mental health issues. And he calmed down, but he's pacing back and forth and talking to himself. Kind of briefly looks at me. I look back at him, and I'm like letting him know I'm right here. And he actually like calmed down. And then the craziest thing happened. He's ready to leave. I'm actually walking out myself too, and I held the door for him. And as he's walking out, actually thanks me for literally holding the door for him.
Wow.
And I literally said, as I was walking away, unfortunately, he had an episode. It only lasted like about a minute or two. Hopefully, he calms down. Hopefully, he has a great rest of his day, and I hope he gets the help that he needs. You know, if I didn't understand mental health, Nicole, I probably would have been like, all right, let's beat this guy up. Let's throw this
So
guy
the
out of the
crazy
store.
thing is you were I'm listening to the story, and you're tapped into literally numerous people's mental health, right? So you're tapped into yours, obviously. You're tapped
Mm-hmm.
into his for obvious
Mm-hmm.
reasons, but now you're tapped into the employee's mental health. You're tapped into the fact that their mental is telling them this is normal. This isn't an actual threat. This is a
Mm-hmm.
vocal threat, but we all know. And it took you to be aware of their mental health to see that, because you could have done a number of things. You could have wilded out on him for personal
Yeah.
reasons of safety. You
Yeah.
could have wilded out on him and just blamed it on or justified it with saving or securing them and making sure they're safe and not in
Mm-hmm.
danger. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
but you didn't, only because you were tapped into mental health. You
Yeah.
were aware of mental health, not only of yourself, but around you. And I think when you start to tap into your own mental health, you pour into that mental health self cup, right? And now
Yeah.
when you're pouring out into others, naturally, you're able to pour into them. So you're able to pour into this. Yes, you've seen him before, but ultimately a stranger, right? To you. You're
Mm-hmm.
able to pour into him. You didn't have to say anything to him.
Mm-hmm.
And your mental health affected his mental health in a positive way when that could have went so many different ways for so many
Oh, of
different reasons.
course, of course. And that situation alone, with my own mental health, that takes a lot of work.
Yeah,
You
because
know.
it took nothing for you to be like, yo, shut the F up real loud. Just because you were, guess what? You just got out of overnight shift. You're tired. You're tired.
Mm-hmm.
You're hungry. You're pissed off. You're fighting with your girlfriend. It could have been a number of people that walked into that establishment that could have
Mm-hmm.
went so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
it really, mental health awareness is so important. And that just shows you very many different ways of why.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I'm glad that that's all it was.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what happened after the fact, like maybe half an hour later or an hour later, but
Right.
I know I'm going to see him again because, like I said, I've seen him a few times. I've given him food several times in the past, and he's always said thank you. But today was the first time that I actually saw him have an episode, and I know it's not the first or the last. It's going to be maybe the first of many. But like I said, that's why, like, as I was walking away, I said I hope he truly gets the help that he needs. Because some people don't understand that. And living in New York, and Nicole, you remember this, from like being on the subway.
Yep.
Sometimes we see a lot of stuff happen, and it's either you have compassion or empathy or understanding, or you don't. Look at that man that one time who used to be like a Michael Jackson impersonator, and he had an
Yes.
episode on the train, and this military man got involved and choked him out and killed him, unfortunately.
Yep.
And people justify, like, well, he was going to hurt everybody. But had that military guy who was trained to defend people had maybe a little bit more compassion, probably that guy would have been alive today, and this gentleman would have not gotten in trouble with the law to begin with. So moving along, Nicole, we've talked about healing, and with the healing is a process, and I wanted to ask you, what does your healing journey look like for you today?
For me today, it encompasses more of a maintaining and sustaining my routine. So healing for me is all in the routines, right? And it's not to say like spontaneity isn't necessary, because I think we all kind of thrive in some spontaneous events and just like livelihood, right? But it's all in the routines. It's all in the discipline of the routines. It's all in the accountability to a routine that's going to work and that has proven, that it not only functions, but you thrive off of it, right? So for me, when I started healing, I kind of broke everything down 1 year at a time. It started with the physical, right? My physical fitness, my physical health. I got to the gym. Then I quickly noticed, okay, this is bettering my mental health. So now at that point, I went from therapy, which was that was court appointed, right? Because I went through the whole legal thing with my abuser at the time. So I now was in therapy and I'm in the gym and I'm like, okay, I do love therapy. I suggest everybody go to therapy. But for me, in my personal journey, therapy for me was becoming more of a venting session. And that's necessary. You have to release all of this stuff. Like you can't sit on it. You have to release it. But I was more, and maybe it's my Brooklyn kind of native side. Maybe it's that Puerto Rican tenacity. I don't know what it is. But I was like, all right, well, what am I gonna do with all these stories? Like, all right, now we're here and I got it out, and okay, I don't feel as bad anymore, but now what? Like, who's gonna hold me accountable to do something different? Because now I need that type of help. And that's where I was like, okay, physical health, I'm down. I got my gym routine. I'm accountable to that. I'm disciplined. I'm daily cool. Mental health. Now I switched over to a life coach. And I made it my business to personally develop through way of emotional intelligence. So when you asked me earlier, where's my healing journey now, my emotional intelligence is being tested. It's being challenged. It's being really looked at and reviewed, I feel like, from God. And I'm at that point where today, emotional intelligence is really where I'm at with healing. I have discipline, I have self-control, I have um I have that grace. I've learned to give myself grace. I've learned to be accountable to a better me. But for me, right now in healing, I am still and will forever be evolving and growing. But right now, I'm learning how to be emotionally intelligent when most triggered. And that is hard because naturally nobody wants to be triggered. Like we don't want to go outside and start
Exactly.
our
And we
day off
can't control
well
being
and be
triggered.
triggered.
Yeah, we can't control being triggered.
And that's just it. You can't control it. And it's like a double-edged sword. You need more of it in order to overcome it better and get better at practicing healthy coping ways, right? And healthy skill sets and healthy responses versus unhealthy reactions. Because a trigger will have you react versus stopping, logically thinking, and responding. It will make you impulsively react. So I'm at that point where I'm like, all right, God, give me one more trigger. And then I'm like, hey, but not that bad, please. Like, just please, I can't, I'm still recovering from the last one. So right now, Nicole, where she's at in 2026 in healing is learning to remain emotionally intelligent when extremely triggered. And that's like the raw deal of it. Because again, I think a lot of people will see this and think she has it all put together, and once she got it fixed, it never went back to bent out of shape. And nah, this goes in and out every day, all day. It's forever evolving. It's forever growing. It's forever. Sometimes you do feel like you're taking 5 steps forward to take another 10 back,
Yeah.
right? Like you
Yeah.
just feel like you're gonna be pushed back no matter what, and you are. A lot of the
Yep.
times you are. You're gonna get that kickback. That's to see like really how far have you come? Where is your mindset, and where's that difference from before? And I learned, and I swear I tell this is like the one thing I tell my survivors. Life is happening for you, not to you.
Mm-hmm.
It is happening for you. Every experience is going to be what it is, whether you like it or not. How you respond to it is what creates it a bad experience or a good experience.
Exactly.
You open the refrigerator and the milk spilled. That was going to happen whether you wanted it to or whether you didn't. Now
Mm-hmm.
you curse everything in the kitchen out. You get your anxiety all the way up here. Your blood is like boiling, and like the ears are steaming. Now the kids, you're frustrated with them. They can't even ask you where a sock is because you're ready to blow up. You're on your way to work. You got road rage. Now it's a bad experience when all it
Mm-hmm.
was spilled milk. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I
Yeah.
try to give people those small kind of analogies because
Mm-hmm.
it's very relatable, because everybody I
Yes.
think has opened the fridge and accidentally spilled something and it just
Yes.
sets them off. But
Yes.
it really is on you to respond to it. And that's what
Of course.
creates the experience, whether it be bad or good.
Yeah. I like that. I like that perspective a lot. Thank you for sharing that. It has a lot to do with just being very self-aware, and I like how you mentioned, forever evolving, because I honestly believe that in our lives, for as long as we live, we're evolving no matter what. Somehow, some way, even if it may not seem that way to us or we're not really paying attention to that, but
So
we're
that's where I
forever.
am right now. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm so down on, and not down on myself where I'm like, you're horrible. No, I'm giving myself grace, but because I want to be and I know I am so accountable, it's like I'm at crunch time internally, right? I'm like at that, all right, girl, you getting triggered, but this is 6 years in. Like, let's start getting that toolbox, pull out those tools from 5 years ago, from 4 years ago, from 3 years ago. Now is the time where this is why we started collecting all those tools. This is why we did
Mm-hmm.
all that work.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it felt good for a really long time, but now you're being tested. So now you have to go back and you have to utilize what you have and what you learned. And it's not easy. It's not
Yeah.
easy. As of lately, I have been feeling very much like I told you, I'm doing this wrong. And it's like, no, you're not. You're just going through it. And as long as you recognize, the resilience, right? The bounce back is so important, especially when you aren't doing what you know you should be doing, because
Yeah.
we're imperfect, we're human, we're gonna mess up, right? So if somebody pisses me off or disrespects me and I curse their mama out, no, that's not the right thing to do. Yes, it was validated and justified, but I quickly need to understand that response is not okay, that reaction is not okay. Logically being quiet, giving it about 10 to 20 minutes, think it through. Sometimes it takes hours just to release that fume before you can discuss it, but you have to know that, you have to be aware of that.
Of
And
course.
that's where I am now, and I'm just kind of like challenged, and like what you said just kind of triggered like ooh, yeah, that's me. Like I don't feel like I'm getting it right all the time right now, but
Mm-hmm.
these conversations let me know, yeah, you are getting it right, and you're human, and this is just how it goes.
Yeah. I like that. So, folks, we're getting close to the end of this episode, and I have two more questions to ask you, Nicole. But before I do that, I wanted to give one more shout out to our other sponsor, Maddie Rocks Coffee. The link is right here for those that are coffee lovers. Every single time that you visit that website and you use the code TRP10, which is right here on the screen, you save 10% off some of the best coffee in America, Maddie Rocks Coffee. It's a coffee that has me going. I'm a big coffee lover. Today I had Dunkin' Donuts, but tomorrow, now that I got my new coffee maker in my house that just came in today from Amazon, I'm going to be making sure that I have my coffee from Maddie Rocks. So again, for those that are coffee lovers, especially, now that it's spring for most of us, people are drinking a lot of cold brew, a lot of iced coffee. Check out this website right here and save 10% off. Also, folks, I did mention that we have now celebrated 2 years of the Resilient Podcast. This is actually season 3 of the podcast. 55 episodes later, we're at season 3. So all of this cannot be possible if it wasn't for those that support, for those that listen. And as you may see here, for that are watching on YouTube, I'm wearing my resilience jacket. So make sure that you visit our website, resiliencetribune.com. Go to our shop, support our merch. which is created and designed by our partners at For Your Wear. Shout out to Blue, who is the person behind the designs. Right here on the screen, resilienttribune.com, and make sure that you, like I said, support our merch. We have more merch coming in soon. Also, for those that would like to share their story, whether it's on the podcast right here or on the Resilient Tribune platform, which is our publishing platform, resilienttribune.com, or send us an email at info@resilienttribune.com for more information, and we will consider your story. So, Nicole, we're getting close to the end. It's been such a great conversation.
Yes.
It's definitely a conversation I'm going to remember for the ages. And I'm glad that we finally did this. I'm really glad that we finally got the chance to do this. It's a long time coming, as you know.
Yes.
We've been talking about this since last year. And, I want to congratulate you on everything you've done. You mentioned that you are a founder of your own nonprofit. And it's actually something that I aspire one day to do as well. It's to be the founder of my own nonprofit. So congrats to you on that.
Thank you.
I definitely will be asking. You're welcome. I'll definitely be asking you for some advice in the near future when I'm ready to start my nonprofit. So Nicole, my next question is going to be a little sensitive. I'm not sure if it's going to be sensitive for you, but it's sensitive for me because you mentioned you're 36 years old, but sometimes
38.
I want to 38.
I'll take 36 though.
Okay, there you
I'll
go.
be 39 this month, but I'll take 36 at any
Okay, there
time.
you go. Look at that. I'm leaving 39 and entering my 40s, and you're literally entering your last phase in the 30s before you turn 40. Interesting. So yeah, you're gonna be 38 years old. I mean, no, you are 38 years old. You're gonna be 39. So my question to you is, looking back, what would you tell your younger self? If you can talk to little Nicole or little Coley, what would you say to her?
Trust yourself, but only trust yourself through accountability. Trust yourself to know that it's all going to be okay. It's going to work itself out, if nothing else. But the more accountable you are and the earlier on you receive that message from God, is the quicker and the not quicker, the more effectively you will align with what's exactly out there for you. And absolutely nothing that's for you will miss you.
I love that. I love asking people this question, Nicole, because it's interesting to hear how you talk to your younger self, if you can. I think that when we're younger, we don't think about talking to our older self.
No. We don't even think about what we're like. And that's funny you say that, because I specifically answered that question thinking about how do I remember feeling younger? I can always remember feeling like, oh, what if this doesn't work out? What if this is, what if it falls or it fails, or what if, and it's like, nope, everything is going to work out. And if it's for you, it's not going to miss you. So worrying about it, that's really specifically what I would tell my younger self. To trust myself. Again, that goes back to that always worrying, what if this doesn't, just trust yourself that if it's for you, it's going to work out, even if you don't see it working out, at that moment.
Yeah. So folks, we're coming to the end of this episode, and Nicole, I'm going to ask you the final question in a few minutes. But before that, folks, as you may know, Nicole has an event coming up. Please support, register now, to join her in this walk for mental health awareness. And, again, Nicole, congratulations on everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
I wish you much success, and I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yes.
I know you're from Brooklyn, so I don't know if I'm gonna have to meet you out here, or I might have to go to Philadelphia and meet you out there. But I wish that I know we came across each other some point last year, but I wish we would have known of each other a little sooner, because as you may know, I did a documentary on resilience. It's not out yet. We're still finalizing the final parts of it, because we did have some boo-boos in between, a lot of hurdles to get this documentary finalized. But if I wish I would have known you sooner, so I could have somehow involved you in it. But with that being said, it doesn't mean that I can't involve you in future projects. But I definitely would love, if you feel comfortable enough to ever have your journey documented. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I would definitely love to do that. So folks, it's been such a very interesting episode with Nicole. We've gotten a little longer than we were supposed to, and I'm okay with that. And I'm
Yeah.
sure Nicole is too, because these conversations are beautiful to have. So, um, Nicole, do you have a website or something where people can find you for, like, to be more locked in with you with certain things? I know your social handle is available here on the screen, but do you have like a website anywhere you can direct people to let people know what you're
So
working on next?
right now it is social media that is my main point of contact. I'm working on a website for the organization. That's kind of where we are now,
Okay.
making a website and basically having all of our services, resources available like at one click away, right? Like that's the goal, to make it super user friendly, especially, the point of my organization is to educate. I know a lot of DV, and I'm sorry if this wasn't the question you asked, but I'm going to kind of flare off a bit. The A lot of DV resources and help come with housing, right? And it comes
Mhm.
with shelters or food banks, right? And while that's super necessary, and I'm grateful because I've utilized many of those services in my time of need, I'm looking to target an audience that hasn't been targeted yet in a way that they need it, right? So I
Yes.
think a lot of people don't understand what we go through when we're leaving and we have nothing. We have the shirt on our back and tomorrow's supposed to be 45 degrees. So what about a jacket? But we don't have a jacket, right? So the
Mhm.
whole goal of my organization is to educate and provide resources, tangible and non, that aren't typically provided. So the goal is to have kind of like a hub, and I mean, we're in the very early phases of making this happen, but I will give you like exclusive info. The goal is to have a hub where we will have educational courses for children, right? And the point of this is to prevent future abuse. So we educate on personal development, we educate on emotional intelligence, we educate on physical fitness, we educate on nutrition, we educate on financial literacy and financial independence. Because
Mhm.
these are all things that if I were educated young on, right, earlier on, I could have probably prevented being in an abusive situation. Having
Mhm.
the more knowledge, having more education, knowing myself better, being more in tune with myself, trusting myself more, right? And
Mhm.
that all comes with the courses that I want to provide. It also comes with trade courses for children. So they know that there is a way for them to be financially independent. They don't have to rely or codepend on anybody for their
Mhm.
bills to be paid or for to get what they want or need. Um, but yeah, that's really what I want it to be. I want it to be a central place. We'll also have a closet where anybody can come in who's leaving, an abusive situation. And this isn't just for females. I need everybody to understand this is for both women and men. It will be located in the central area of Philadelphia. And the goal is to be the place where a survivor runs to in that moment of surviving. There's many times where you don't know where you're going to go and you call 911 and they don't know where you're going to go. And there's many times you call the shelter and they're full, or you're a survivor without a baby, so they're gonna take the parent before the non-parent. So I want it to be a place where we can offer other resources, but definitely be somewhere where a survivor can run to in their time of need.
I love that. I really do. It's really cool, and I love when people create things like that.
Yeah.
Thank you for creating this. Thank you for being, you may not be aware of this, Nicole, but you're building a legacy. And when the time comes and you're no longer here on Earth, people are going to remember you for the things that you did. People are going to remember
Thank
that precisely. They're going to remember Nicole, the warrior Figueroa. You know what I'm saying? At least that's
you.
that's how I would want to remember you. Um, and I'm sure your daughter's going to be very proud of you when they get older, and they're going to be like, my mom did all of that.
Yeah.
Not just for us, for
Thank
herself,
you.
but for everybody else. So thank you for creating that. Not just for women, but also for men, for people.
Yes.
Your mission is to make sure that, like you mentioned, people. How do we target those people that are not being educated on this, or
Yep.
don't have the resources? And I like that type of stuff. I've always been that type of person. One of the reasons why I created this podcast is to allow people to share that information on this platform so that it can get out. Because people are always like, "Hey, is there a program out there that offers this or that?" Yes, come
And that's
listen to
the other thing. Nobody comes and hands you the information, right? It's like
yeah,
and in that time of trauma, the last thing you want to do is be on your phone, like Googling and researching. And it's like, you
yeah.
can't even think, let alone open your eyes from the crying all night, let alone the headache. And it's like, nobody really provides that. That's more like why that hub is so important. If this is where you're looking, these are the resources. If this is where it's like a one stop shop to alleviate that stress, to alleviate that whole mental draining of what next.
Yeah.
So
So,
I thank you. I
folks,
thank you for the recognition in that as well.
yeah. So, folks, by the time that Nicole comes back on this episode, which will be in October, I'm sure Nicole will have a website by then for her
Yes.
nonprofit, and a lot of information will be available. And throughout the summer, I will keep people informed. As soon as Nicole gets this information out for me in future episodes, I will be mentioning it all. But once that next episode comes with Nicole and I, back in October when we revisit this conversation, there'll be even more information Nicole can share with us.
Yeah.
So again, Nicole, I want to thank you again for being on this episode. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I truly appreciate it. Keep up the good work. I know that you are a warrior in spirit and everything else. Keep elevating, keep evolving, keep inspiring and educating, because I know that's one of the things about you is that you love to educate people. I've seen a lot of videos of you as a late with a microphone in your hand, sitting on the stage,
megaphone or a microphone.
and not just that, but like even in the walk, you're going to be educating people on this walk.
Yeah.
You're not just going to be walking, you're going to be looking at people, talking to people, educating people about stuff. And it's a beautiful sight to see. So Nicole, I'm going to ask you the final question that I ask
Yes.
everyone that joins my episodes. And that question is, what is your message to the world and why?
My message to the world is never be afraid to share your story. It's cut and dry. My why for it is because one, we all have to reveal what we want to heal, and we all deserve to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, your story, not can, but will help somebody else in their journey. It doesn't matter whether you know about it. It doesn't matter whether you find out about it. It doesn't matter whether you ever even know who it is you're helping.
Mm-hmm.
But your story will help somebody else, aside from helping yourself heal from the whatever the story is. So yeah, never be afraid to use your voice and share your story.
Yeah, I love that, because you also never know who's listening, right? And who's watching.
Yeah.
So we could be helping a stranger out there somehow, some way. I remember when I started this podcast, I received a gift from someone who randomly reached out to me on social media and was like, "Hi, Rob. I listen to your podcast every day, and I shared this story before." And they said, "Can I please have an address? I want to send you something." So the first thing you think is like, I hope this is a situation that's actually positive and it's not
a scam or something,
a scam or an advantage for someone to try to harm me. So as hesitant as I was like, look, you can only take that chance and see that risk and see what happens. And next thing you know, I received like this beautiful necklace that I'm not wearing it today, but it's a beautiful necklace that somebody made for me. And when I told them, thank you so much, what does this necklace symbolize? They told me resilience.
Wow.
And I definitely made sure that I used it while I was filming the documentary, and it was one of the best gifts I've ever gotten. And I don't think that if I never created this podcast, I would have never received that gift.
Yeah. And you would have never changed that person's life for the better.
Exactly. And this is someone who's much younger than both of us, going through a lot of stuff, contemplating suicide, and thankfully that person is still with us today. Because I check in with them every week. I make it my mission. They've asked me to never, disclose who they are out of the, privacy and respect. And I've told them I will never disclose that unless you're willing to come one day. Because I asked them, would you love to be on the podcast one day? I was like, right. I got to think about it. But this is someone who I respect a lot. But they don't live in America, and I was like, listen, I understand your pain. I know where you're coming from, and you just know you're not alone. And they told me I look so forward, because I told them a little bit. I was like, hey, I'm interviewing somebody for mental health, and they were like, oh my God, one of my favorite topics. And I was like, yeah. And I said, and trust me, you're going to be inspired by this person's story. So I hope that when they watch this episode, and everybody else, that they're inspired. I hope that today everyone takes away something special from this episode. I haven't had a long conversation like this in a while on the Resilient podcast, but I think that it's so worth it. And again, Nicole, thank you again for your time today. Thank you for your story. Thank you for teaching people today how to become a warrior, and again, I truly appreciate it. So Nicole, I hope you have a great time at this walk.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I look forward from hearing from you, like how it went and everything.
Yes.
But folks, this is it. So next episode will be episode 56, and we'll continue the conversation on mental health, and we'll probably talk a little bit about my birthday, my 40th birthday, the big milestone. But until then, on behalf of Nicole, this is the Resilient Podcast. Remember to always remain resilient, and I will talk to you all soon.
Thank you
for
so much.
tuning
And
in.
happy birthday to us.
Yes, exactly. Nicole's birthday is coming up first. So Nicole's birthday is the 10th, right?
Yep.
The 10th. And my birthday is on the 19th. So make sure you guys, if you follow Nicole after this episode, make sure that you reach out to her on May 10th and say happy
Thank
birthday.
you.
Okay, guys.
Have a blessed day, everybody.
Yes, I will talk to you all soon. Peace.